Hi, I'm Archie Law. I'm the chair of the Sydney Peace Foundation. At the Sydney Peace Foundation, we're worried about the impact that a heating climate will have on access to justice and global peace. We believe lasting peace means a just and fair transition to a safe climate for everyone. We're interviewing leading thinkers and change makers about the link between climate action, peace and justice in this series, A Climate of Peace. And these are short sessions designed to give you an insight into ways people can, should, and are acting on climate action. So today I'm joined by David Ritter, who's the CEO at Greenpeace Australia Pacific. So welcome, David, to A Climate of Peace.
Thanks very much, Archie.
Just to kick off, David, how do you see the consequences for a peaceful and just society of a continued failure to address climate change?
Well, monstrous. There is no just peace unless we address the climate crisis and unless we do it really quickly. Climate change works like the ultimate threat magnifier. You think of any issue that you like that concerns you, and global warming makes it worse. And so in the context of all of the things that we think of that are the causes of war or of injustice, climate change simply accelerates those. But, you know, the great thing is we have all of the solutions, the technical solutions, all of the policies we need to make a rapid transition to clean energy. So as much as the threats are truly dreadful in scale, the great thing is this is not a problem that doesn't have the solutions there in front of us.
And David, what do you think, has to change, and how do you see it changing? Because obviously we've gone through the bushfires in Australia and then followed straight on with a global pandemic. You know, and I was just thinking, we were talking before we started about Paul Gilding's book about the Great Disruption, and it seems like it's almost here in some ways. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, well, I mean, I smile wryly because the scale of the disruption we've experienced in Australia in the last 6 months has been unprecedented in so many ways. Unprecedented fires, unprecedented smoke in our capital cities, an unprecedented scale in the third great bleaching of our Great Barrier Reef that has taken place. And then the unprecedented lockdown in response to the COVID pandemic. So, you know, it feels like we've lived a decade or more, perhaps in half a year. So what's it going to take? Well, look, the extraordinary thing is there's already a significant majority of the Australian people in favour of a rapid transition to clean energy. So, you know, that's fantastic. We've already got the policy and the technical solutions that we need. So, you know, that's fantastic. All of those policy solutions tend to have other multiplier effects, whether it's for cleaner skies or more flourishing, varied economy or better cities. So, you know, that's fantastic. So we have to ask ourselves, you know, what is standing in the way? And I guess what we've seen from the ways in which the community have reached out together and pitched in together during the fires and during the pandemic shows that there's great reservoirs of social goodwill to do things collectively. So, you know, that's fantastic. But the thing that stands in our way is the institutional corruption of our public institutions by the vested interests of the coal, oil and gas industries and the other big polluters. So, you know, what's it going to take? Well, I don't think what we need is more disruption. I mean, God forbid that anyone thinks that such disruptions would be a positive thing. But what we do need is the most concerted possible effort from all of us, from all citizens, all organisations, institutions who want that flourishing future that is still possible to dislodge vested interests that are warping and institutionally corrupting our democracy that should be there for the common good and for the future of for people and planet.
And I suppose how many, say, of the average Australians, whoever that is, but say the woman and the man on the street, do you think are actually aware of, the infiltration of public institutions by, the fossil fuel industry, essentially, and even of Australia's, this addiction to fossil fuels? And interested to hear your thoughts on how do we rid ourselves of this addiction? Because I was thinking before we talked too, recalling when Naomi Klein won the Sydney Peace Prize in 2016, and how she mentioned that the Endeavour was actually a coal vessel, or whatever a vessel is that actually carries coal, before it was commissioned for use to go on this grand voyage. How many people do you think are aware, and then what do we do to break this addiction?
Well, look, I think at a deep level, people are very aware that our democracy has been corrupted to vested interests. I mean, it is why there is such a shrug of the shoulders at stories of politicians not acting in the public interests, and why the status of politicians and trust in government has fallen so low in Australia. So I think at some level there's a very great acceptance of it. But of course, what's important is that can't be allowed to translate into just a sort of, well, nothing works, nothing can change, because that's simply not true. Australia has shown again and again that we are capable of making these immense positive changes, whether it's through the full enfranchisement of women, or the breaking down of some of the old racist order in Australia, or whether it's our global participation in things like the creation of World Park Antarctica, or the human rights instruments at the end of the Second World War, or the historic achievement around the minimum wage. There are these things Australia has been able to do in our history, and we need to draw on that legacy. We need to reflect on the fact that we are no longer a whaling nation, that we are no longer a nation that mines asbestos, that we are no longer a nation that thinks it's okay to have slavery on our pastoral stations. There are multiple ways in which we have shifted the status quo in this country, and will continue to do so in the future. It is simply a matter of democratic resolve. People like you and me, and all our families, and everyone else out there, and ultimately enough leadership from those who do have that obligation to the Australian people to get us to the other side of this. And you ask about COVID. COVID shows what is possible when there is leadership there, because the extent to which the decisions to close society down actually required our political leaders to confront some vested interests, and to listen to some experts, and to trust the citizenry, shows what's possible. Actually, the transition to clean energy is nowhere near as inconvenient for the Australian population as the COVID lockdown was. So, above all, mate, we just need to get on with it.
Yeah, thanks, David. It was really notable, wasn't it, when we trust medical science implicitly and enough to shut down the economy, but we won't trust the climate science. The contradiction is just so apparent. And maybe just finally, David, if there was one thing that you could ensure is taken to move towards a safe climate for everyone, what would that be?
Well, it would be to shut down Australia's old, ageing, dangerous, polluting, deadly fleet of coal-burning power stations as rapidly as possible, and with appropriate just transition plans for all affected workers and communities. We need those gone. We need them gone within a decade. just today, the eminent economist, Professor John Quiggin, has mapped out how this is both doable and readily affordable. And then the other thing we need is a complete moratorium on any new coal, oil or gas developments. There simply isn't the carbon budget left. And we have got to get our nation, our society, our economy on the path to the new. You listen to, people like talking about fossil gas or, coal, and you think it's like listening to a bunch of old crusty old blokes in the 19th century talking about the virtues of the chamber pot rather than wanting to move to the flushing toilet. It's just we just have to commit to that transition as a country and get on with it.
Okay, thanks so much, David. Fantastic talking with you, and look, everyone out there as well. Look, I hope you enjoyed this session of A Climate of Peace.
Can I add one other thing?
Yeah, please do, David. Yeah.
Archie doesn't know I'm going to do this, but one of the things, super important in days that are difficult are the friendships you make in the course of this work. And I've really appreciated, Archie, your mateship, your friendship, your comradeship over many years and all this stuff. And it's great to chat today, and I just like to share that with whoever's watching us do the Statler and Waldorf act today.
No, thanks so much, David, and the feeling's mutual, that's for sure. It's always great seeing you and great talking with you, whatever we're talking about. So thanks.
Even by Zoom.
That's right. And if I turn to folks who are watching, you can obviously find out a lot more about the Sydney Peace Foundation and the Sydney Peace Prize on our social media pages. So get over there and have a look. So thanks again, David. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
You too. Talk soon, mate.
Okay, bye.